Welcome back. Let's talk about taking the ick out of sales and warming up to the idea of recognizing buying signals. I am so excited to welcome Nikki Rausch to today's episode. Nikki is a sales specialist with over 25 years of experience, and she's here to help us spot the buying signals that we might be missing, from that very first call to those big client presentations. Have you ever wondered if you've talked right through a signal that your client was ready to spend more or to take the next step? Or maybe you've struggled with how to respond when a client shows interest without feeling too salesy? Well, Nikki is going to walk us through what to look for, how to listen more effectively, and how to feel confident about closing the deal in a way that feels authentic and approachable. So, whether you are a seasoned pro or just starting to find your footing in the world of this design business, this episode is packed with actionable insights that you won't want to miss. So let's dive in with Nikki and learn how to melt away the sales jitters. Hi there, interior design lovers. Welcome back to the Business of Beautiful Spaces, the podcast where we blend design inspiration with all behind-the-scenes tips and tricks you need to thrive in your business. I'm your host, Laura Thornton, and with over 27 years in this interior design game and running a 7-figure design company, trust me, I've seen it all. I want to be your interior design bestie. I want to help you build the business of your dreams, make more money, and yes, ditch the stress along the way. I've been doing this for a long time, and now I'm sharing my knowledge with all of you, my fellow designers and decorators. All I ask in return is that you like, review, and follow this podcast wherever you listen, so other designers can find us and learn more too. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into making 2025 your best business year yet. Welcome back to another episode of the Business of Beautiful Spaces. Thank you so much, Nikki, for coming on the show today. I am a true fan, true listener of your podcast, and I'm thrilled that you're here today to share all your insights with us.
Well, I am delighted to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. I just want to start off. I already said I know the answer because I listened to you, but would you share how you got into this field and then into the field of sales and then initially what sparked your passion to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I actually had a college project many, many years ago. I always say in the late 1900s, back in the way back days, I had a college project that got me my first professional sales job. And I am not a traditional personality style that people think of when it comes to sales. I'm an introvert. I am about relationships and people and the idea of the hard sell, the go out and hunt the big game and all that stuff with sales is so icky to me. So having to find my way in this profession of how can I sell in a way that is authentic and genuine to me led me to start studying neurolinguistic programming. And if that's a new term to anybody in the audience, it is essentially the study of communication. So neuro, the way we process information in our brains, linguistics is the language piece. And then the programming part of NLP is about habits and patterns. So the most simplest way that I can say is I bring this back to my all-time favorite quote, which is, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." And what I teach now and what I do now is what I was able to do in my career and have a lot of success with is learn how to adjust and be flexible in a conversation to put the other person at ease. And then that led me to have some real success in the sales profession. And I did that for many years. And at some point I got to this place where I was looking around going I know all these people that I'm hanging out with. I've been working with them for so many years and I knew all the competitors, knew them as friends. And it just got to this place where I was okay, is this it for me or is there something else? And that was a huge awakening because I had had quite a bit of success. I was making very good money and had really established my reputation. And because I got curious about oh, is this it? Is there anything else out there? I ended up leaving my corporate job and starting to help somebody build their business. And I really fell into the business that I have now, which is Sales Maven, by starting to hang out with entrepreneurial women. And I found that by hanging out with these women that they were really struggling with sales conversations. And they were struggling to make money in their business. And it was mostly because they didn't really understand the structure and the process of sales. And that was something that I thought, oh, I could just help some of them if they want it. And turns out they did want it. And somebody encouraged me to start my own business, which I first thought, like, well, that's dumb. Why would somebody pay me? These skills seem so easy and they're easy to learn. But turns out here I am 13 years later, having the time of my life, working with the best possible people and really teaching people the structure of a sales conversation.
I love everything you just said, and it's so true because it's easy for you, just like there's some elements of my job that are easy for me, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy for somebody else. And there's things that you can teach and there's things that you can't. But I have taken away so many good nuggets from your podcast. So anyone who's listening, make sure you follow and listen to Nikki on the Sales Maven, because you'll learn so many nuggets every week. It's great. But I know today we're going to focus on recognizing and how to respond to what you call the buying signals, because we sit with our clients, we are trying to educate them and sell them on not just us and our design and trusting us, but also the products that we are suggesting. And then you get to this presentation and you want to stay on track and we want to keep moving forward, but we don't want to seem that we're being pushy and forcing them to spend a lot of money, and you don't want to feel like you're pushing them, but at the same token, how to recognize those. So can you explain what a buying signal is in
Yeah.
sales?
So a buying signal is a verbal or a nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest. And this really was the catalyst for me starting my business, is because I hear buying signals all the time. And in my head, I actually hear, people think this is crazy, and maybe it's because I am, but I actually hear like an auditory noise. I hear this like ding, ding, ding. And it's like, oh, buying signal, pay attention, act on this. Because when I started hearing other people getting buying signals and they were just missing them left and right, I was like, oh my gosh, that person is basically begging to pay you money and you're just prolonging the conversation. You're like brushing them off unintentionally. Like it wasn't like people didn't want to work with them. They just didn't know how to recognize these buying signals. So I started talking about them. So again, verbal, nonverbal cues that people give that indicate interest. And the crux here is not only do you have to pick it up, the buying signal, recognize it, you have to actually act on it. And acting on it means issuing an invitation. So, along the conversation, a sales conversation, or frankly, conversations that you're having out and about in the world, and you might not even be paying attention to this, when you start to pick up buying signals, you will have more business than you've ever had. And you'll find that it's easier to move people through the sales conversation because they're giving you indicators. And if you're missing them, it's kind of like, like traffic lights, right? Or like, here's the sign that says, turn right. And you're like, what? I missed it. And now you've got to like backtrack, to get back to the road that you just passed because you didn't take the right. So once you learn how to take the right, you shorten the process. You make it so easy for people to go like, oh yeah, this is a conversation. It feels casual. It feels easy. And now I'm ready to buy.
Okay, so let's rewind, because I think as a woman designer, and I don't know how many men are listening, I know we're heavy on the female side. So I think it's a disservice that we overtalk and we talk, and because we are constantly talking and educating to our clients or trying to convey what we're selling to them and why we think these are the right choices. When you're saying recognize a signal, are we just talking over it and not paying attention? Like maybe it's the stop and listen, or what specifically would be a signal that you could maybe share with me? Because I'm thinking, okay, so I nod along, I make sure someone knows I'm listening. Is that considered a verbal, or can you give me an example? Just so I'm
let's get into the nitty gritty of it. So
I know, sorry, I might be putting you on the spot.
I love this. I love
so
this.
curious. Yeah.
I can talk buying signals all day long. As a matter of fact, I actually wrote my second book about them. And that's all it is. Like the book is just, here are 17 buying signals. This is what happens. This is what you say when you get this one.
Okay, so give us one so that you still have to buy the book.
yeah. I'll happily give your audience the 17 buying signals because they're so important to your business. It will change your business when you start to know how to recognize these. So here's one. Actually, can I give you two? Because I want to give you a really obvious one.
Yes, of course.
And then I want to give you a more subtle one.
Okay.
So a really obvious one that people miss, and you're going to think I'm crazy, but stick with me for just a second, is when somebody asks you about what it's like to work with you. A lot of times a designer or whoever it is, like all of us, right? Coaches, all of us, this falls to all of us. Somebody asks what it's like to work with you. And you give an answer that's either really generic or you say something like, it depends on, what it is that you're looking for. And then you kind of wait. No, That's you missing the buying signal. Because when you get a buying signal, your job is to answer the question and issue an invitation. So if somebody says, "Gosh, Laura, what's it like to work with you as a designer?" I want you to say what it's like is this. You can have a sentence or two, and then you say, "Now, is that something you'd like to talk about? What it would be like for you specifically?" And then you zip it and you wait and you let them respond. You don't word vomit. You don't say, "Well, I work with clients in 18 different ways and you could do this for me. You can get product for me. You can blah, 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 blah." Now you're word vomiting. And people are like, "Well, now I'm sorry I asked because I don't know what to do with it." So you give just enough of an answer for them to go like, "Okay, I feel like you gave me an answer to my question." And then you issued an invitation. And the reason the invitation is so crucial is because somebody might ask you what they think is a generic question, like, "What's it like to work with you?" with no intention necessarily of like hiring you. They just want to know what's it like for a designer, right? Or what's your business like? Or who do you work with? But as soon as you answer the question, we as people, we think the whole world revolves around us. Like everything that happens is happening for me, to me, or against me. And this is where we get in our way in sales, is because we forget, because we're so caught up in the world revolving around us, that the person who's asking the question is also thinking the world revolves around them. So when you answer the question, they immediately start applying it to their own life or business. And they're starting to think about what would it actually be like to work with Laura. I hadn't really thought about having a designer, but now based on her answer, I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to set up this new home that I just bought and I could have somebody come in and actually make recommendations to me? So then by you issuing the invitation next, is that something you'd like to talk more about? Or would you like to explore what it would be like to work together? Whatever your invitation is. Now you, by asking that question, you give their brain an opportunity to answer the question. And if you don't ever ask the question, the brain never gives the answer. So by them saying, "Oh, maybe," that's enough, because now we can take that conversation further. But if you just give the answer, like I said, with a word vomit and don't issue an invitation, they might go like, "Oh, okay, well, that feels like a complete answer. I'm moving on with my day or my life." And you never get that opportunity to maybe work with them. So the really obvious one is like, "What's it like to work with you?" Right? Like sometimes it sounds like they're asking for somebody else. They're not. They're asking for themselves, whether they realize it yet or not. And then here's a one that people often push back on. They're like, "I don't know if that's a buying signal." And I'm like, "It is. Let's at least act on it." Because worst case scenario is you're wrong and it's not a buying signal. You issue the invitation and the person says, "No, thank you." Okay, big deal. Move on in the conversation. It's not like, they didn't say like, "You're a terrible person. Don't ever talk to me again." It was just like, "No, thank you." So a less obvious one is if somebody talks about a negative experience they had with somebody in your field, or it doesn't have to be a particular person, but maybe it's like a situation. Like, "I explored hiring a designer in the past and this was my experience." And it can be a negative experience. A lot of times people think like, run away so fast. Like that person will never hire a designer. No, there's some part of their brain that's wondering if working with you would be different. So your job is to say something like, "I'm so sorry that was your experience. That's crazy," or whatever makes sense. And then you go, "Here's what clients experience when they work with me." You give a sentence or two. And then you say, "Now, is that something you'd ever be open to exploring?" Wait, let their brain give them the answer, because chances are they're going to say yes. There was a reason they brought up this negative experience. They're not just trying to bash you. Very few people are. Every once in a while, you might run into it. But for the most part, they're bringing it up for a reason. And the reason is about them.
That happened to me this morning on a job site. So that happened to me this morning, and he was telling me all his horror stories about a previous contractor who basically mucked up a bathroom. And my first response was, "I'm very sorry that that happened to you." So I was giving myself a little like virtual pat on the back when you said that. But I didn't ask that question because I'm already working with them in their house. But what I did say was, it really gives the rest of us a bad name. And now you're going to see that that's not the case. But I'm already in their home. I'm already working with
Yeah.
them. But that is exactly the sympathy that they're looking for, I
Yeah.
think but they clearly are still, to your point, they were still seeking help in other parts of their house and still looked for others. So now I'm going to put that one in my back pocket too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it sounds like those two that you just gave me, I really see those fitting into our process as designers, decorators, creatives. When we're trying to get to the consultation phase, we've had where that's a complimentary phone call with a potential client, and now you're seeking to get to the next step where I'm going to come into your home and potentially charge you for a couple hours of time. So I'd be curious to know what would be a cue if we're now in studio, we now are doing a presentation, and the budget can be anywhere from a $50,000 bathroom to a $600,000 basement, whatever the case may be, regardless of
Mhm.
size. I guess the
Yeah.
question is, when you're now at a point where you want to take it to the next, then you want now the procurement end of this project. What would be a cue there? Like, what would be a nonverbal, like, what should we be looking for if it's time to say, are you ready to give me that deposit check and let's get rolling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Okay. So I feel
usually
like,
they're in sticker shock. Normally they're in shock. So let's give you that little tidbit. Normally they're like,
okay.
ooh, so how do you get past the ooh, the ick? Like, that's what I always see. They're like, ee,
Okay.
that's a lot.
So I feel like there's possibly two questions in there. So I'm going to answer the second one that you brought up is like the ick of like if they're having sticker shock or they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." One is you don't want to like freak out. And two, here's what I will say is there might have been an opportunity earlier on in your process to mitigate them having sticker shock. And one of the ways that you could do that is during the initial consult, you might want to plant some seeds about pricing. So if you say, bathrooms can range anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000, where do you see yourself falling in that? Because then when you come back and you say, this is a $50,000 bathroom, they're like, oh gosh, I'm so glad I'm not at the $100,000 price range. Right. So we might want to help kind of like smooth the surface a little bit, but let's say they just have straight up sticker shock. Then I want you to take a breath, let them take a breath because they need some time to process because they're hearing this for the first time. You already know the pricing. You already know what's into, all the stuff that the behind the scenes stuff. So just don't freak out. Just pause. And then here's your next question. What were you expecting to invest in this? Or what were you thinking it was going to be? Because we might want to check in because sometimes when you ask that question, they're like, I hadn't really thought about it. Oh, okay. So they just need some time to process. They're just hearing or seeing it for the first time. Or let's say you say it's a $50,000 job and they were thinking like, I guess I was thinking this was a $10,000 job. Well, you might have then identified this is not an ideal client for you. And that's okay. We're going to bless and release them because you're not going to do a $50,000 job for a $10,000 job, right? Or for a $10,000 budget. But you could maybe then say, well, there are some ways that we could look to reduce pricing if you're willing to give up some of the things that you had initially mentioned were important to you. So now you can actually offer possibly a downsell to get them started. Because one of the things I suspect, but you're the expert, so you tell me, Laura, is that sometimes just getting people started with you and they have such a great experience and they love it and they're so happy with the deliverable that they're ready then to do the next part of the project and then the next part and the next part. And this $10,000 job ends up not being a $50,000 job, but it actually turns into a $150,000 client
Yeah.
lifetime value. Probably maybe worth it to see if we can get something started in the price range they were thinking. But again, if you're like, there's no way, they're so outrageous. And I actually had somebody say to me one time, she was like, I make $3,500 an hour. And I was like, great. And after talking with her, she was an ideal client for private coaching. And when I asked her what she was looking to invest, she's like, I'm not willing to spend more than $100. I'm like, for coaching? And that was the answer. She just really wanted to spend $100. And so my downsell to her was you can buy all three of my books for actually less. So that's my recommendation for you because I'm going to bless and release. Like even though she's an ideal client from this perspective of like, I know I can help her and I know I can make her like more than $3,500 an hour for what she was talking about doing, but she's not willing to invest it. Therefore, she's not an ideal client. Therefore, I'm not going to waste her time or mine and I'm going to bless and release. So we got to get through, like, let them have their moment but don't freak out about it because it's easy if you start going like, well, here's all the ways that I have to justify that price. You don't have to justify your price. Like your price is your price, period.
And I think what it also, like to your point, like she's going to read the books, she's going to gain confidence in you, and then she's going to come back for the one-on-ones. And that's like us too. You build confidence, and you don't just get $1 million projects from nothing. Like it's
Yeah.
built up from having your clients eventually trust you with more of their money and their time and creating their dream home. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned something before where you said, I'm just going to circle back a bit because it resonated with me. You said we overspoke during our presentation or conversation with a client, and then we missed the cue. And we
Yeah.
missed the cue, and maybe all of a sudden it comes to you that I might have missed the cue. And it's coming to you as you're further in the conversation. Is there a way to bring it back, or have we missed the cue
Yeah.
and we got to wait for another one?
You can always bring it back. So at least check to see if you can, at least attempt, right? Don't just like, even, I don't even care if it's 2 weeks later that you realize, like, oh my gosh, I think they might have given me a buying signal and I totally just blew through it
Blew
and
it.
ignored it. Yeah. So you can circle back with people and just say, I was thinking about our conversation, or earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned XYZ. And I'm wondering, is this something that we should dive deeper into? Or if I'm following up 2 weeks later, you had mentioned in the conversation, this was something important to you. I have a few ideas for you around that and ways we might work together. Would you be interested in exploring that? If so, here's a couple possible times where we could jump on a call or, get together in person and talk through those. Please pick the time that works best for you. Like that's the like follow-up message. It's very simple and it's very easy. If you what I mentioned earlier, like if you're kind of talking too much and you're not giving them the opportunity to actually give you any kind of feedback or any kind of signals or ask any questions, that is like you're in what I call the talking at mode. And in sales, you never want to be talking at people. You want to be talking with. And with means that you have pauses, you wait, you let them process what you just said, and then you see if they're going to say something or ask something or do something next. Because oftentimes, if you interrupt that, whatever they're going to say or do or ask, that might be the thing that you needed to know in order to earn their business. So you got to be patient, which patience does not come easy to me. So I will say, I get it if you're like, oh, patience, Nikki, please. That's horribly hard. I'm the same. And it's worth it in order to get that $100,000 million project or whatever it is in your business.
I hear that because I turned 50 this year, and it was my goal is patience. I've never had it. I have the patience of a 2-year-old. I feel, and I can hear it, I can see it, I can feel it. It's something that I now at this age am really trying to work on because it's something I'm not good at, and trying to apply it in situations like that. So, and I ask that because, I often wonder, I'm sure every designer and decorator listening has had this experience where you have a really great call with a potential client, and your gut, your instincts, everything is telling you this is a done deal. Like the response was great. They're already, and the next step would be to lock them into, not lock them into, that's bad verbiage, but to get them to commit to having us come to their home for, let's say, a paid 2-hour consultation. That's my process. That's a lot of people's process. And you say, I always say I will follow up with some options and some dates. And I'm wondering if that should more be like, is that something of interest to you? Let's lock down that date right now. And let's get you committed.
Absolutely.
Because when like I feel like maybe now I've given them too much, because we've all had, and we're like, what happened? Where did they go? They never
Yeah.
responded. I lost in their emails. Now you're sending follow-up emails, but I had you. We were connected. I could feel that it was a good fit. Your project is right up in my wheelhouse. What happened? And they ghost us. And so
Yeah.
you always often wonder what happened. So when you're saying ask the question, is that something that sounds attractive to you or appealing to you, or is this something that you would like to explore? Can we turn around and say, is that something we would like to book right now?
Yeah. I would even say, if they say yes, that is something, then I would say, let's go ahead and book your time
Yeah.
now so we can get this scheduled. Because here's what you might think you're doing, and then here's what you actually are doing. I don't mean you, Laura, but I mean you, the collective.
Well, I'm sure I am.
Okay.
I'm having aha moments left and right.
So when you say to them, like, I'll send you some dates and then we can kind of go from there, like you think you're being soft and you think you're being easy. And you think you're being like chill and going to make it easy for them to make
Yeah.
a decision.
Because you don't want
And
to be
that's the
salesy,
intent. Right.
pushy,
Right.
icky. Like we don't want that,
Yes.
Yeah.
But in actuality, here's what you're really doing. And I'm saying, please know I'm saying this with love and support and
Oh
appreciation
no,
that you
I
are
want to
just doing
know.
the best you can. You're essentially saying to them, hey, I don't want to do the work right now. So let's
Mm.
add a bunch of stuff to your to-do list as the person who's going to make a decision. And I don't know if you've heard this, but they say most of us die with our to-do list undone. You never want to be at the bottom of somebody's to-do list. You don't want to make them have to do the work. It's actually your job to earn the business, and it's your job to make it as easy as possible for people to get the outcome that they're saying they want. And the way that you make it easy is you allow them to make the decision in the moment. And here's why. Because there's a statistic out there, actually, there's a couple studies about that the average adult makes a certain number of decisions every day. If you've heard my podcast, you probably have heard me talk about this before. So I'm going to ask your listener, think about your average day and how many decisions do you think you make? Like come up with a number in your head of like, okay, I make X number of decisions on average every day. So as a listener, you got the number in your head? Or I don't know if you know the answer to this, but if you do, I won't make you say, but so you got this number, right? Maybe you've guessed, 5,000, maybe you've guessed 100, maybe you've guessed whatever. But they say the average adult makes between 30 and 60,000 decisions every day. So when you say to somebody, like, I'll follow up with you in a few days with some dates, you are putting yourself at the bottom of their 30 to 60,000 decisions they have to make. And how many days has it been since you had the conversation? So here's why they ghost you is because other things are calling for their attention. And most of us are just like, we're living and breathing our calendar. We're jumping from one thing to the next. We're putting out fires as fast as we can in our lives, in all areas of our life. So, getting back to something that got postponed. I mean, how many times have you thought, I'm totally going to read this book? And then you set it on the shelf, and then a year goes by, and then 2 years go by. Or I'm totally going to watch that series. Everybody says it's so great, but you don't start it. And then 2 years go by and you haven't seen it. Or like or I'm totally going to get together with my girlfriends more this year, and I'm going to set up a dinner. And then the year goes by, and you've had dinner with no girlfriends this year because you didn't do it in the moment. So, in order to make it easy for your client to make a decision and take that next step with you, you have to at least attempt to allow them to schedule it while you're physically in the room or in the conversation. So, I want you to say, the best next step would be this. Is that something you'd like to go ahead and get scheduled? That's you issuing the invitation. This is close language, by the way. You've got to close. And if you're not getting close language out of your mouth, you're again like saying to them, like, oh, don't bother making a decision. Like, you'll get back to it when you're not busy. Well, who of us is not busy? Like, I don't know anybody that's not busy.
Yeah.
And especially these people you wanted to earn their business that are, they've got a lot of money to spend. They're busy. They've got a lot of things coming at them. Everybody's vying for their attention. You don't want to put yourself at the back of the line. You're at the front of the line right now. Take your opportunity and make it
Yeah.
easy for them. And if they say, yes, let's schedule it, then you get a date scheduled and you take the money right then, too. I get so much pushback from clients when they initially start working with me. They're like, I can't close on a first call. I'm like, yes, you can. And I have example after example after example of clients who have told me this, who now, as a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with one recently. She's like, it's been 4 years since we worked together, Nikki. I close on my first call now almost always. I don't have to have 2, 3 calls with people. Like I close on the first
Right.
call. She had never once closed on a first call before she started working with me. And it was just this like learning how to issue an invitation, learning how to make it easy for somebody to buy. And she went from, and I think I talked about this on the podcast not too long ago. She went from wanting to like grow her business to $20,000 a month. Like that was her goal. She wasn't even at 10 when we started working together. And 4 years later, she just told me the other day, she's like, I have days that I'm closing 60 grand a day. Like a day. She's not doing anything different. She's doing the stuff that I taught her to do. Like that's it. You got to
Huge,
close.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. You made a lot of connections for me there because like to your point, it makes you feel like you're, giving them the freedom to make selections on their end. You feel like that's pleasing and that you look like you're flexible. But really, what we've done is we've taken money right out of our pocket and projects right out of
Mhm.
our pocket. But what also was really interesting when you were, and I did know that stat, I've heard it from you and I've heard it in other places, but we're entrepreneurs. So I always think our list of what's like how many decisions we make on other people's projects every day, how many decisions we make on our business, let alone our children, our home, our life, like so many decisions. And a lot of my clients actually are entrepreneurs. So what you've just made me connect with is, yes, I've added to my own to-do list by having to follow up and having to create
Yes.
an email. And then when they don't go, I have to keep like now it's like I actually have a sheet to track my sales because I don't close it at the beginning. I reach out 3 times. And then after I don't get an answer, then I send a, we're going to stop bothering you now email. Like I have all these things in place. But really, if I had just said, let's lock it down now, I wouldn't need that sheet. I wouldn't have to add it to my to-do list and I've taken it off there. So there's a lot of connections there. I've added
Yeah.
more work for myself and somebody else. So
Amen.
simple, but
Yeah.
thought I was
Yeah.
being accommodating and pleasing to your point as opposed to the
Yeah.
pushy that we never want to be.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's not about being pushy. It's about making it easy for somebody to make a
Hmm.
decision.
It's a mind shift.
I listened to a sales call yesterday where I was actually in my office, so I couldn't hear word for word, but my husband was talking to somebody and he needed to make a decision about a purchase that frankly we were not planning. Like we didn't know that when we brought somebody into the home to check in something, like something was going on that we were thinking like, oh, it might be a couple $100 fix. No, they came back and said this is somewhere between $5,000 and $30,000, 5,000 and 30. So we weren't planning to spend that yesterday. Like that was
That
so
hurts in
out of the
December. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. Oh
it's
my
December
gosh.
to everybody who's
That's
listening.
right.
That
That's
hurts
right.
like 2 weeks before Christmas. Yeah.
But I listened to this guy and my husband had him on speaker, which so why I could like listen into this call. And and he quoted my husband a price and then my husband was like, "Oh, kind of hemming and hawing a little bit." And then he offered him like an alternative to kind of an objection that my husband had. And then he gave him an incentive to close right then because I heard my husband say, "I want to talk to my wife about this and she's working right now, so I'll have to get back to you. Can you send me a quote?" And the guy was like, "Here's an incentive if you're able to make a decision right now." And he goes, "Hold on." And then he puts the guy on mute. He walks into my office and he was like, "Here's what he's offering me if I'll close right now." And I was like, "Close it." Like that, you just saved us hundreds of dollars. We weren't even planning. I mean, we still spent thousands, but we weren't planning to spend. We were like, what he saved us is kind of what we were planning to spend, right? But at least now it feels like we're happy. We got a good deal. And guess what? They're here today delivering on the service that we bought yesterday. And it was thousands of dollars. So, and I'm not a high roller here. Like, like that's not how I, roll. So people, if they want your service, they're going to buy it. But your job is to put the offer in front of them and make it easy for them to make the decision. Don't make it harder.
This is a little off topic, but I think you can appreciate this. So last night I was coming home from work and my husband called me and said that he was home before me and he was going to ask me what I wanted to start for dinner. And then he said, "Oh, and by the way, I'm in Canada, so we have Rogers and Bell, which is our two like telephone, internet, TV providers. And Rogers recently came into our area, and now they're trying to push a little bit more business their way. So someone came to the door, and my husband is an introvert, I'm the extrovert, and so someone came to the door and was asking him, about switching, and he just kept saying, "Well, my wife will be home, and she'll like you can talk." He didn't want to do it, even though he's been complaining about how high the bills all are. So he said to the guy, "Just come back." And he goes, "Well, what time?" And he said he had an answer for everything. Every excuse he said, because the guy had an answer. He goes, "He was a great sales rep, but he, like it bothered me." I'm like, "Well, you should have hired him because like this gentleman, he said every single objection." So then I had to go back and watch it on our Zoom camera, our Ring camera, because I thought if he was this good. So he did come back at 7. And when he came back at 7, I said to him, we were having this talk. But to your point, he had an answer and an incentive, and somebody trained this gentleman, or he was a natural born. But I actually said to him, "Any experience?" My husband's in the dental industry, selling sales. He owns a sales. "Any experience in dental? Do you have?" Because he was such a good sales rep. And he had an answer for everything that it was ridiculously impressive. It didn't bother me. I was impressed. It wasn't something that was like swarmy, pushy, yucky,
Yeah.
icky. It was, you really know your stuff. You truly believe in your product. I can feel that you are believing in your product. but he was just so good. And I remember thinking, how do I absorb like 10% of what this guy has? And so I know it's sales, but it's off topic. But this was someone going door to door. It was
Yeah.
impressive. I I don't know if it's
I mean,
natural or if it's taught, but
I'm sure it's a
he had an
combo.
answer for everything. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
But to your point, there was incentives, there was lock. He had an answer. He didn't want to have to leave my front stoop without a
And the thing,
sale.
and the
And I
thing is
wanted to
like,
give it to him.
yeah, that right. Like we actually, as much as people say like, oh, I don't like to be sold to, you do if it's done well. You do if
Yeah.
it's done from a genuine, authentic place. And I'm not talking about being pushy or schmarmy. I'm talking about there's kind of three things. If you've identified this person has a need and that's the first thing. The second thing is you know that you have a solution that will meet that need, solve that problem. The third thing is they've given you their permission for you to offer a solution to them. As soon as you've got those three things in place, like the gates are open. Let that horse run because they're ready. They're ready to have an offer put in front of them. And the reason that I recommend closing and issuing close language, like, should we go ahead and get that scheduled now? Because by issuing a close statement or a question is really what it is, one of five things are going to happen when you attempt to close. The person's going to say yes. Awesome. We book the time with them. We take the money. We've got a new client. The second thing is they'll have a question. If you don't attempt to close and they don't get a chance to ask you that question may be the difference between earning their business or not earning it. So we need to be able to answer the question to earn the business. The third thing that will happen is they'll have an objection. Your job is to uncover objections. The way you uncover objections is you issue close language. You can't assume that you know what people's objections are. And as a matter of fact, if you're assuming in a sales conversation, like you are being schmarmy. So you issue close so that if they have an objection, now it's uncovered. Now you can check to see if it's the real objection, and then you can offer a solution if you have one to the objection. But again, if you don't have a solution, like the lady who's like, I have $100 to spend, well, my solution is she can buy all three of my books. That's the solution. And there's no hard feelings about it, but she's not going to be a private coaching client and she doesn't get any more time, right? So if you have a solution to an objection, then you can offer it and then you can immediately issue close language again. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is the person will say no. I'm not interested. I'm not going to buy. Great. Now I don't have to waste any time or energy sending those three emails, doing all that follow up
Yeah.
work for somebody who's not going to buy. That, like, do you need any more busy work? No, you don't. So we want to get that no. If that's going to be the answer, the no. And then the fifth thing that will happen when you issue close language is people will legitimately say things like, I need to think about it, or you need to wait until my wife comes home at 7 and then meet with her, right? And so here's the thing is if that's truly what needs to happen in order for someone to make a decision. Now again, this guy, with my husband yesterday, he didn't just like take his like first no as a no. He checked to see could he overcome that, which was, if I offer you an incentive, are you able to move forward now? To which my husband was like, well, I'll just go into my wife's office and I'll get an answer and make sure that she's not going to like freak out and clutch her pearls when I tell her how much I just spent. Right. So he's willing to take that step to close. But if my husband was like, no, she's not available and I absolutely want to talk to her first, then that guy's job is to say, okay, let's schedule a time to chat. You'll have an opportunity to talk with her tonight. Let's talk first thing tomorrow morning. Right. And then schedule that circle back call to let them come back and say, here's what my wife said, or here's a question that I still have that I need the answer to. If somebody will schedule a circle back call with you, if they say they need to think about it, you offer to schedule the circle back call and they do schedule it. Now, what you've done is you've stayed at the top of their to-do list because it's on their calendar. They actually do have to think about it. And then they have to decide whether or not they're going to get on that call with you. They're not going to not think about it and then get on a call with you and be like, what's this about? No, they saw it on their calendar. It's there. They've made a decision or they have a question they need answered. If I get people on circle back calls, my close rate is really high because people don't get on calls, circle back calls with me if they're not going to hire me. They actually send me a message and say, Nikki, I thought about it. I'm not interested or I'm not going to buy. Great. Now I don't have to waste time and energy trying to chase somebody who's never going to buy from me. So your job is to always move the process forward and make it so easy. And the easier, like, I cannot say this enough. And I cannot say, like, this is really the crux of how you can grow your sales. The easier you make it for people to buy from you, the more likely they are to do it because we all are looking for easy. We all want things that are smooth, easy. Don't make me jump through a bunch of hoops. Don't make me have to have 18 calls with you. Don't send me 18 follow-up emails. Make it easy for me to buy. And chances are, if I have any interest in buying, I'm buying it from you because you made it easy.
Yeah, this is so simple that it's maddening that I haven't thought about it sooner. Because again, I'm putting this connection of I don't want to be pushy and I don't want to seem like I am in sales, salesy mode, but then I'm following up with all these emails. So I've literally negated what I'm thinking. Don't want to be that person when we're having this call, but now I'm doing it three times with dates and follow up on this is my last time I will attempt to, we'll hear if you need us. Meanwhile, I could have locked it down. Aha moments all the way around, Nikki. I have 4,000 more questions, but I think it's a great place to pause because it's awesome that so many people listening, including myself after doing this for years, are taking so much away from this. So could you share with us where listeners can find you if they don't already know where to listen to your podcast, your website, books, all the great things that you're doing?
Thank you. I'll wrap it around a gift for your audience if that's okay.
Of course.
So I have a ebook. It's called Closing the Sale, and I'll happily gift it to your audience. It talks through kind of the last 3 steps of the sales conversation and gives some how to build your confidence in there. What are the actual words that you say, things like that. So Closing the Sale ebook, you can get it by going to yoursalesmaven.com/spaces. So this is for your audience. I'll happily gift that to you. And then you'll be on the website. You'll see there's access to how to get the books there. There's the podcast is there. You can listen to the Sales Maven podcast. And yeah, any way I can support you in getting more confident and comfortable in your sales conversations, please know I would be delighted to hear from you. So reach out.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And I'll put all of that into the show notes. So anyone who's listening didn't have a pen and paper or they're driving, it'll be there for you. So it's an easy click button. And thank you for your time today and your expertise. I value you every week and especially today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.